Hey everybody. This is Mark Thomas from the Ball and Chain podcast, welcoming you to our next episode. I believe we're on episode 28, and we have had a super eventful weekend. And we, of course, in the NBA, and would, of course, love to chat about this with our good buddy, Jess Udy. So without me getting into kind of a long diatribe of everything that's gone on, let's bring Jess into the podcast right now, and let's talk all things Jazz, Bucks, and Sixers, Hawks, and I guess Clippers, Suns too. So, what are you up to, Jess? Are you doing okay?
Yeah. Yesterday was depression mode, but we've recovered. So
all right, let's start with this here. So the first question I have to ask you, I didn't watch Game 5. How did you guys lose Game 5? Because you actually have a really good home court advantage, the Jazz do. And you obviously had home court advantage sewn up throughout the entire playoffs, had you made it that far. And the Clippers are not notoriously known for being a road team, and Kawhi on top of it was hurt. So how the hell did you guys lose Game 5? Because that's, in my opinion, where you lost the series.
Yeah, I agree. We also lost the series by being up 25 and not winning. But Game 5, you're right. We needed it. I think the biggest issue, if you didn't watch it, Donovan Mitchell was extremely hobbled the entire game. And I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think I'm looking up. Yeah, he only scored 21 points. He was kind of just a shell of himself that game. And so I think that was the issue Game 5. It was just like we got off to a quick start again, like we do. Bogdanovich had a huge first half, and then he kind of disappeared in the second half for the most part. And then I think Bogdanovich had like 23 or 26 at the half. But the issue was Mitchell just couldn't be the guy. Near the end of the game, he started playing hero ball on his one good leg. He airballed probably like 2 or 3 shots that he has been hitting. Obviously it's not expected that he hits all of those, but yeah, if you didn't watch it, from me, my takeaway was he was hobbled. And it's kind of the same thing on Game 5 too. It's like the Clippers, the second half just killed us on the 3 ball, and Quinn Snyder just wasn't doing anything to adjust to that. Kind of exactly what happened in the second half of Game 6.
So I would have to say that if that's the case, the Jazz being without Mitchell and the Clippers being without Kawhi, probably the advantage does go to the Clippers in that situation, because the Clippers are definitely deeper for sure. On their team, and can probably withstand Kawhi if the other team's leading scorer and best player is out, or playing hockey, right? So that can make sense. I'm still surprised because I know Quinn made some very questionable moves in Game 6, but I still think he's a better coach than Lou.
Did you watch Game 6?
Yeah, I watched the entirety of Game 6. So we'll get to that in a second. I did want to talk about 5 though first, because I still feel when you look at a 7-game series, you have to, if you're the team with home court, you have to take care of business at home, because the type of stuff that happened in Game 6, which we're going to get into, can happen on the road, and for a variety of reasons. And so, again, yes, you need to win those games when you're up 25 on the road, at home. It doesn't matter where. You have to take care of those. The reality is still, I just still think losing a game at home when you have a good home court, which I believe the Jazz definitely do, you got to do it. And so then, if that had happened, you blow the 25-point lead in Game 6, but I would think that you'd probably win Game 7 for sure.
Right. I agree. Especially we had Conley back. You know what I mean? That was also an issue throughout the series, in my opinion. The Jazz without him are super stagnant, and there's no other penetration threat on their team outside of Mitchell without him. And in Game 6, he was kind of a non-factor, but I mean, it's kind of looking at Harden, maybe that's your segue there into something, but
right.
It's like he was a non-factor. So, I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, it was rough having him out.
All right, so let's get to game 6 then, the total
Yeah.
utter debacle collapse game. So first of all, I somewhat agree with Jeff, mostly agree actually with Jeff Van Gundy's point after the game, which he talked about, and I just kind of, if you look at the playoffs so far, this has been true. A 25-point lead in the NBA today is not like what a 25-point lead in the NBA was 25 years ago, because the proliferation of the 3-point, shot. I mean, you can get back from a 25-point deficit in 8 possessions versus 12. And that's a big difference. I mean, that's 50% fewer, or 50% more possessions you would have needed 25 years ago, when the 3-point shot was a tiny part of the game. And so I think that is a big thing that I think we've kind of been conditioned for all these years to think of these, 20-point lead is insurmountable and you can't come back from. Honestly, nowadays, I feel it almost has to be low 30s, like 32, 33. And then I feel it's almost impossible to come back from that. Whereas 25, that's definitely borderline. But at home, a team that's trying to close it out, they've got all the fans are back, and that of course is the other part about this. So California just lifted all the COVID restrictions on Tuesday, which meant this was the first game back with a full house and full capacity crowd too, which of course didn't help anything either.
Yeah, at the same time, it's like a lot of times during those 25 point comebacks, it's like, and I agree with you to the point where like they can be erased faster, but I mean, a lot of bad has to be done on one side and a lot of good has to be done on the other, like obviously, but it's like, I still think though, like 25 is like nothing to joke about. I know the Sixers just blew on like 2 or 3 days before that, but it's like,
right.
I don't know, like that there were turnovers and there was non-adjustments made. Gobert.
Wow. Yeah.
Gobert should not have been in that game when the Clippers went to small ball.
Right. 100%. Yeah. He just was an absolute liability at that point. I mean,
he was.
He couldn't defend and he couldn't score. And it's like, well, why is he out there? I mean, just because he has that name.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering the whole time. It was like mid third. I started texting all my my Jazz fan friends, and I'm like, I started freaking out. It's like, why is Gobert in there? Because usually, if you're gonna play a big against a small ball lineup, it's because that big can just dominate on the offensive end and take advantage of that small ball. Gobert can't do anything. And so it's like, not only was he the typical liability on offense that he is, but it was like on defense, he couldn't close out. And like, and so that was my big issue is it's like, it just kept happening and happening and happening. And I would say, I mean, the Clippers hit 30 shots in that second half. They were 30 of 42. God. And man, I'm interested to see how many were on Gobert. It had to have been at least 20 because it seems like they weren't shooting over anybody else.
100%. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is that, obviously we'll get into the Bucks here in a second, but, Coach Bud is like notorious for not making adjustments in game or even sometimes from game to game in the playoffs. He did better this series, especially in game 6 and 7. But how Quinn, by the time there were 3 or 4 minutes left in the third quarter, you had to make a change at that point. And that was probably even too late. But I mean, at least by then, right? And to continuously put Gobert out there when he's getting burned and to not, I guess, kind of shift the strategy away from like a zone to more of a, get up in people's faces on the 3-point line and, force them to put their heads down and go to the basket, which would have at least made them work a little bit harder for their baskets. They would have gotten 2s instead of 3s. And who knows? I mean, maybe they wouldn't have been able to finish. And also then if you are going to keep Gobert out there, then that would play into his hands better as well too. So I have to say that this one feels like it's on the coach. Game 6, at least. It feels like your coach blew that one. A better coaching job, you probably win that game.
Yeah. I agree. I agree for sure. And it's like everybody on the line's talking about like Gobert this, Gobert that, but it's like, I think all of the blame falls on Snyder because I mean, in the end, you can't expect Gobert to guard a guard. You know what I mean? That's just not what he's meant to do. So if Snyder's going to leave him out there, he's going to get roasted and he's going to look bad, which he absolutely did. But it's like any other coach. It's like they go small ball, you go small ball. Let's match them. You're up 25 points. Like even if their small ball is better than our small ball, like it's better than whatever was happening out there. So
yeah, 100%. And I think the thing that has to stick in your craw even more so with this game is that it came to the Clippers, who this is their first time in 50 years that they made the conference finals. I didn't even realize that until they gave that stat at the end of the game. I mean, I thought for sure, I knew it had been a long time since they've been to the finals, but 50 years since they've been to the conference finals. And so to blow, a 2-0 lead, to, blow a 2-0 lead in the series, to blow a 25-point lead in game 6. I mean, to that team. I mean, if it was the Lakers, okay, maybe you just go, hey, it's the Lakers, right? They're great team and very historically championship minded. But the Clippers, I mean, I know you look, to your credit, you did say in our last podcast that the one team that scares you was the Clippers. And I shrugged it off.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you talking about, man? I'm like, the Clippers stink. And then without Kawhi, once Kawhi wasn't going to play in game 5, I'm like, you've got this. This is going to be easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Does that make you more upset, or are you not even thinking about that part? You're just pissed at whoever.
Well, I don't know. The thing that made me the most upset is because I felt like the Jazz should have beat the Suns in the Western Conference Finals. I actually don't think that the Jazz were going to beat the Bucks or the Nets. So, I mean,
I would agree with you on that.
Yeah, so that like made me feel a little bit better, because it's like if it's championship or nothing, but it would have been nice to see it. Anyway, yeah, so that's why I was upset. I was like, man, at least, I mean, let's see it play out. If we're playing the Bucks, it's like, let's see what a 7-game series can do and what how we match up with them. But at the same time, it's like now we don't get to see it. And
you would have played the Suns without Chris Paul.
I know, right? Yeah, it's a no Chris, but and of course the Clippers just lost today to him. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. I felt like, especially without Chris Paul, like the stars were aligning for the Jazz to finally get to a title, which who knows like when that's going to come around, because next year you're going to have a most likely healthy Lakers team. I don't know. So it felt like the stars were aligning, and then we're up 25 going into halftime, or 23 points at half. And like I was like, okay, we're going back to the game 7. We're going to play the Suns. And like, I was already thinking toward the finals, and then, and then it was just an avalanche from that point. And yeah, so, but yeah, I don't know. It doesn't make me feel any better with or without Kawhi, because it's like, I don't know. It probably worse, because it was like, it should have been a gimme at that point.
Yeah. And the thing is with, a potential matchup with the Suns, not only do the Suns not have Chris Paul, but you would have had home court in that, right? I mean, the Suns played the Clippers in Phoenix today because of the fact that, they were the higher seed, but you would have had the higher seed over the Suns.
Yep, absolutely.
So then, of course, the next logical question is, where do you guys go from here? And I would have been having to ask this question had the Bucks lost yesterday. And so, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Conley seems to always be hurt. Can you keep running him out there? I don't know what any of their contract situations are, so I'm not gonna. I don't have time to look that up right now. But it feels to me like they're so very close. I would probably run it back one more year, just to be sure. And then if you still don't make the finals next year, then you got to make some wholesale changes.
Yeah, and everybody's talking about like. Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I would love for them to add, and who would it be? I don't know. They need a really good wing, not only a defender, but like a scorer. They need one more really good scorer.
Well, you guys have a good scoring team, though. I mean, you're one of the highest scoring teams. You're the second highest scoring team in the NBA.
It's true. Maybe it's a defender, and like because everyone's like, oh, the guards couldn't keep anybody in front of them. Like Reggie Jackson was just penetrating at will, which drew Gobert, and then he couldn't close out on the 3 when Jackson kicked it out. But I mean, at the same time, it's like I almost feel like that's the type of game that the Jazz plays, that the guards let guards get into the paint so that Gobert can clean them up, and then you kind of just dare the other team to shoot the three.
Mhm.
The closeouts were just incredibly bad though. So I don't know. I actually don't know where the spot is, but I think they could use like just a really good like wing player. But what I was saying is everybody on the line is saying uh like Gobert is always going to be like this huge liability. And I
Mhm.
don't necessarily agree because they're like every year in the playoffs he gets exposed because it's been the Rockets the last couple of years, the small ball Rockets, and everybody who goes small ball against the Jazz absolutely destroys the Jazz. But Gobert is good in every other scenario on the defensive end. And they're good enough on offense that he's not that big of a liability. But man, the big issue is just the fact that I don't know if they feel like they have anywhere to go. So it's like they need to get some sort of a small ball option because there is gonna be that. Gobert is always going to be a liability in small ball. So they need to find somebody that can play some sort of like a stretch five to the
Mhm.
point where they can match up small ball with these people and then take Gobert out of the game.
So let me say this. I think the good comparison here is actually the Bucks of last year, or even the Bucks of the last 2 years, but especially of last year, where each of the last 2 years they had the number one record in the NBA, which obviously the Jazz did this year. And I think they kind of held pat throughout the season in terms of making any trades or thinking they needed any help. And the Bucks absolutely positively 1 billion% do not win the series against the Nets if they didn't trade for PJ Tucker. Period. End of story. There's just nothing else to say about it. And we'll get into that when we talk about the Bucks here in a minute. But you guys need some kind of, well, I'll use the term that Tucker used, dog, right? You need some guy that's going to really, not play nice out there, but in a good way. Be in someone's grill, be in the face of the other team's best player, playing just really just all out baller defense, right? And
Yeah.
you need that chippiness in the playoffs. Because as I've seen, Bucks fans were super ecstatic the last couple of years to have the number one seed, and everyone this year was like, we don't give a shit about the number one seed. We just want the right team that's built for the playoffs. And they did that this year. They went out and got Holiday, a superstar defensively, although he's got certainly offensive issues, which we'll get to.
I mean, and they're fine. He hit some big shots at the end. But yeah, continue. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, it's cool. Like I think that's where you guys are, and I think if you recognize that the regular season, it doesn't really matter whether you're the 1, 2, or 3 seed. I don't think you want to be lower than 3, but just get a top 3 seed, but make sure you have the right team built for the playoffs. That is what's critical, because I'm sorry, the regular season and the playoff basketball are just two totally different beasts. And if you don't have some kind of like menace on defense, especially in the perimeter, I think Gobert, down low is great, but you need another guy in the perimeter, and that's really probably what you are missing, is that really, really 90s style baller on defense, perimeter defensive guy that can really stick in the craw of some shooters. And if you had that, the Clippers don't go off for threes like they did and come back.
Yeah, exactly. They just need some sort of, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on for all of our Bucks audience out there.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, but Bucks time, baby.
All right. Well, so look, let me start with this. I've been a Bucks fan since 1988. Back in the Sidney Moncrief, Paul Pressey, Fred Roberts, Jack Sikma, Larry Krzyzewski days. And, they were a nice team. They were always, top 4 seed in the playoffs until they all got old in the early 90s. Then they fell off a cliff for the next 10 years and were a total disaster from 92 to 2001 until they made the Eastern Conference Finals again in 2001. Actually, they had an okay year in 99 too with a strike shortened season. But anyways, been a Bucks fan since 88, and they have been to 2 Eastern Conference Finals in the last 33 years. So they went to 7 games with the Sixers in 2001, and they obviously 2 years ago went 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Raptors. This game yesterday was by far and away the most exciting, the best. It's really almost tough to put into words. I still can't believe that they won. That's kind of my feeling right now. I'm a little bit still in shock. Yesterday was complete. It was a complete roller coaster, followed by complete ecstasy when they won. And I think today is still followed by a little bit of disbelief. I mean, this was the Nets were the super team. I mean, and really for most of the series, they had 2 of the 3. Okay, they never had all 3, but they had 2 of the 3 for almost the entire series.
1.5.
But Harden was, I have to say, in game 6 and 7. Okay, game 5 he was not good, but 6 and 7 he played.
You think so?
Yes, I think he played a lot better.
He looked incredibly slow. I know he played a lot.
Okay, well let a couple things here. He had enough of a 3-point threat in game 6 and 7, especially game 7, that it wasn't 1.5, maybe 1 in 4/5 or something like that, I guess. But it wasn't 1.5. I mean, he had enough of a. Yes, he couldn't drive to the hoop, but it doesn't matter if he can do the footwork that he's got. One of the best footwork guys of all time. The ability to step back 3, and of course we know his flopping bullshit to get all those foul calls, which is just nonsense. Just the reality of having that out there is, I mean, the game isn't close yesterday if he's not out there. So, in my opinion, I still think. And Kyrie was obviously tremendous in the first 3.5 games. So, they still were super. And let's just say, even if it was 1.5, Durant is worth 2 people alone. I mean, the guy is.
Yeah, that's true.
Absurd.
Durant is the best player in the world.
Yes. Oh, that's without question. There's no question about that. And he is superhuman. He is. I think he really, after this playoff series, after watching him, yes, I didn't get to watch, Oscar Robertson and Kareem really. I think he should be a top 10 player of all time. Maybe he's 10th, but I think he should be top 10. A lot of people say top 20.
Yeah,
I think he should be top 10.
You talk about player, like in my opinion, Durant is the most purest scorer of all time.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And but the reason why I would still say he's top 10 overall or all around is because he also plays great defense. And it's not just a jump shooter either. I mean, he can get to the rack like everybody. His free throw. I mean, there's just no flaws in the guy's game. I can't think of one.
He's so good.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. So with that being said, the odds were completely stacked against the Bucks, especially after the collapse in game 5, where they were up by 17 points on the road and blew that. And I actually said that on Twitter that they were going to win game 6. They are a very good home team. They've got a great home court advantage. I was highly, highly, highly confident we would win game 6. And I was highly, highly confident that we would lose game 7. So that's why I was so upset about losing game 5, was not because I didn't think we could, win game 6. It was because I didn't think we could win game 7, and we needed game 5 to not have to have a game 7. So, they won game 6, which, was, I think, most people had that predicted. In fact, they were favored in that game. And so going into this game 7, yes, obviously Kyrie wasn't playing again. Yes, Harden's not at 100%. And yes, the line started at Bucks -1 and eventually migrated to some books were even and some books had the Nets -1. But I was just like, oh God, I mean, I just don't see it. And those that have been Bucks fans our entire life, and a lot of other podcasters and folks on Twitter are in the same boat as me on this one, is you're always waiting for something bad to happen with the Bucks. Like it's a little bit like the Jazz in that case, although you guys have had some more success than we have, playoff success, that you're just expecting the worst to happen. And I have to say two instances where I was like, this is it. The first is when we were down by 2, we stole the ball. This was, I believe, late in the third quarter. Maybe it was early fourth quarter. And we immediately turned it back over at half court. And they
Durant
turned around,
dunks
it and won.
Yeah, no, that was fourth quarter. Yeah, that was
fourth quarter. And
yeah.
I thought that was going to be a turning moment. So basically a 5-point swing is what we're talking about here. And those kind of swings, especially later in the game with being on the road, I mean, those and such, just kind of a momentum play, type of thing, kind of a high energy play, that generally ends up spelling disaster, especially for a team like the Bucks that have a record of, I'll just be pretty honest, like choking or not showing up, in big games.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was the first moment that was over. Then the second moment that was over was almost at the end of the game, when we were
Lopez.
Yeah, I was going to get to that, but I didn't even say the whole sequence of the last 30 seconds where we're up 4, the Nets score to cut it to 2. And then, yes, the Lopez situation, which was obviously the biggest gap in the whole world. All he had to do was shoot it and put it on the rim. And A, there's a chance to get an offensive rebound. Well, A, there's a chance he makes it. B, there's a chance to get an offensive rebound. And even if neither of those two things happen, Durant doesn't have 6 seconds to shoot the last shot. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it is one of the biggest brain farts out there to not have just at least thrown the ball up and shoot. And I was like, oh my God, is this typical Bucks? And oh my gosh, KD's going to do it to us. And oh my gosh, 6 seconds or 5 seconds later, he did. But oh my gosh, the fucking toe was on the line. Holy shit. And I saw it. I saw it the second he shot it. I said, that's a 2. And thankfully the refs called it.
Yeah. So did I. In fact, the funny thing is when he shot it, it was way closer to being a 3 than I initially thought. I thought it was clearly a 2, but then when the replay went, his toe was like an inch away.
Yeah, it was okay. So now here's what's really crazy about this. We'll come back to the game in a second. Ted Davis, the Bucks radio announcer, tweeted out somebody else who tweeted that Kevin Durant wears a size 18 shoe during games because he wants to have a little extra kind of feathery feel out there in the court, but only wears a size 17 shoe in all other situations. If he had been wearing a size 17 shoe yesterday, that's a 3. The Bucks lose, and we're going home, and who knows, what that could mean. But I mean, what just an unbelievable. I have to say, with how bad luck or kind of all some of the choke jobs and stuff that Wisconsin sports have had, in my lifetime, it almost felt like everything got flipped on its head right there and came around full circle in a good way, just with that one play alone, with him having his toe on the line.
Yeah, that one play was the biggest ever. It was crazy. What a shot, though.
Oh my God. I mean, this is the part where I have to just go, all you can do is your absolute darndest to keep him in front of you, keep a hand in his face. But the guy it doesn't matter most of the time, is the bottom line. And it is so unbelievable to watch somebody like that, no matter how well you guard him. It doesn't matter. Now, look, that being said, Holiday did an amazing job with him on the very last play in overtime. And
absolutely.
And I have to say, I felt pretty good when he threw that ball up that it wasn't going in, because it looked like it was coming up short, and obviously it did it airballed. So that was the fortunate luck to have his toe on the line, because we weren't going to score with 1 second. There was no way it was happening. And then the other part of this is that is unbelievable. We didn't score in overtime until there was 1:20 left. The first 3 minutes and 40 seconds.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Nets scored on the very first possession on a missed 3.
Yes.
And then they got the offensive board and put it in.
Yes. And then they didn't score it again until 1:20, or until after we scored.
Yeah, which is crazy, because Durant, it was so weird, because it's almost like in overtime, and I don't know, maybe the Bucks adjusted, but I just kept thinking he kind of stopped shooting.
Yep, 100%. So I think
I didn't understand it.
A couple things. One is they did play him differently defensively in overtime. They were just like, we're not going to let this guy beat us. Anybody else but him, right? So they did play that kind of defense. Was it? And it kind of showed also at the end, right? When he tried to kind of be hero, and he has a right to do that shot, because he had take that shot. Of course
he does. Yeah, nobody else was hitting. They had one shot made in overtime.
But you have to say the Bucks also played it smart in overtime, and this is where I give Bud credit. Actually, really throughout the entire game, he did a great job of making adjustments. He kept Lopez on the floor, who had a monster game for them, except for that brain fart at the end of the regulation. Connaughton had a great game. I was asking for him to pull Holiday in favor of Connaughton in the third and fourth quarter, when it was clear Holiday was just absolutely lost offensively. And I guess to Bud's credit, he stuck with him, and he had 6 monster points, or was it 6? Or
he's too good 5 on defense.
Yeah, I get that, but hang on a second. So at this point, you still need some offense. You got to have some, right? But anyways, he had 5 or 6 straight points, plus that great bounce pass on the baseline to Giannis for the layup and one in the final minute and a half. Yeah. So he redeemed himself big time. Huge. I mean, he had a huge final 4 minutes of the game plus overtime. So, I mean, it worked.
He locked down Harden.
Oh yeah, no, he was fantastic, and Middleton did too. I mean, he has turned into, in my opinion, a very elite defender. Not quite as good as Holiday, but still very, very strong on an otherwise very strong defensive team. Which that actually is the thing I want to kind of really take away and talk about with regards to the series. Everyone, rips on the Bucks' stagnant offense at times. They rip on certainly Bud, and rightfully so, for some of his lack of adjustments. But the biggest reason we won the series is our defense is fucking awesome. I mean, it is really, really, really good. They held a team, the Nets, who were scoring on average, 118, 119 points a game in the regular season to 100. I mean, and especially in Milwaukee, they couldn't do shit. So, I mean, look, I still kind of a little bit believe defense wins championships in this day and era with the NBA, maybe less so. But that's why they won the series, and they built the team. And then we haven't even talked about PJ Tucker. I mean, PJ Tucker was all the difference maker in the world. We traded DJ Augustine and DJ Wilson for him. 2 DJs equal PJ. And that was DJ plus DJ equals PJ. The math adds up for me. And so, I mean, he was just a stud. He started to become a legend back in Milwaukee with the way he played defense on Harden in the series.
You mean Durant?
Sorry, Durant.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, he genuinely bothered Durant. Now, obviously, Durant got all his points. He still was phenomenal, and he still was amazing. But I just think the sheer act of making him have to work so hard for all those points, at some point that's going to, take its toll. Maybe it's not until the very last game of overtime, the very last shot of overtime in the very last game. But, and also I think it stressed out the other players on the team. Yeah, on the Nets. I mean, Joe Harris was completely non-existent this series, as well as Green for the most part. So I just think that, overall defensively, that's why we won. And I think the Bucks, while maybe their offense is overrated, I think their defense is actually very, very underrated.
I agree. Their defense is incredible.
Yeah. So, okay. Now the Hawks have beaten the Sixers. And so it is a Bucks-Hawks Eastern Conference Finals.
Sweep.
Just as predicted at the beginning of the season, right?
No. I'm saying the Bucks are going to sweep the Hawks.
Oh, I thought you said sweep. Yeah. No. I say Bucks in 6. Why do you think they're going to sweep?
Yeah. I'm gonna say 4 or 5. I think the Hawks are good, and I think they've got a lot of offensive firepower, and they're hot. They're playing well, but I don't see any aspect of their game that's better than anything that the Bucks do.
So here's what's interesting. As I was looking at this game 7 today, I thought we matched up very, very well against the Sixers. I was totally unafraid of playing them in a 7-game series. Sure, we weren't going to have home court, but I didn't think it was a big deal. I mean, shit, the Hawks won 3 times in Philadelphia in the series, so I'm like, big deal if Philadelphia has home court. I just don't think they're that great. They can't shoot. It's just basically a one-man show in Embiid, and that's very, very
well, yeah, especially one of them can't shoot.
It's just Embiid. I mean, they're a one-man show, and that is it.
Curry played good. Ben Simmons. We got to talk about Ben Simmons at least.
All right, fine. So you mean I'm seeing on Twitter, they're gonna maybe look to trade him this offseason. Is there even a trade market for a guy that passes a wide open dunk?
Who wants him? He's the worst.
Yeah. What does he do?
Like legitimately, that dude has got to be the worst max contract player in the NBA.
I just don't understand, what does he do well? Okay, he passes the ball well. All right, fine. That's great. I mean, you can probably find – those guys are a dime a dozen nowadays, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you pass the ball well and do a few other things well, okay, now we're talking. But if that's all you can bring to the table, he can't shoot. He can't really rebound that well. He can't make free throws at all. He has absolutely no I guess whatever you want to call it, like aggressiveness, especially in big games. I mean, dude, why would you want that guy on your team? I for the life of me think who would want him, or where would he be a good fit to go?
especially with his contract. Like I can see him being some sort of a role player because he's got good defense.
Sure.
But that dude is a bigger liability on offense than Gobert.
Oh, for sure, 100%. But where? Okay, so if there's a trade that happens, or if there is a trade market, do you have any kind of idea where he would be a good fit?
I have no idea. I legitimately have no idea because you almost can't even play the dude at the end of the game. In fact, one of my favorite parts of the playoffs so far is literally just watching him because I don't know. He's like the biggest hack-a-shack liability in years. And it's hilarious because he's a point guard. I just don't get it.
I know. So I would think that if he's to go to a playoff team, obviously if he goes to a non-playoff team, whatever, I mean, it just doesn't matter what he does. But a playoff team that he'd be a good fit for, I would say it's one of two destinations. Either the Clippers, because I think their defense sucks. I mean, bad. I mean, their defense is horrid.
Yeah.
Or the team that he just lost to, the Hawks, because their defense is also an issue. And he needs to go on a team where they already have enough scores, where his offensive playmaking can kind of be hidden or swept under the rug by all the other guys on the team, and where he's in there for some defensive stops, at certain times, as well as maybe some, assists and whatnot. But I just, why would you want that guy on the team? I just can't even think of why.
Yeah. I can't imagine. And he's such a hyped up player too. Like,
oh, yeah.
I think after this playoffs, I almost think his career is almost done.
Yeah, he's going to have to reinvent himself. There's no question about that. He's probably going to get traded if the contract will allow for it. If the contract won't allow for it, you could see some kind of, I could see a buyout happening type of situation. Although I don't know if he would agree to that. Because he's obviously in a great situation with the money that he's making.
Yeah,
so,
he's a max player.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, it does have to be one of the biggest busts from a max contract perspective ever. I mean, people were giving shit to the Bucks for giving Middleton max money. Yeah, he deserves max money. Okay.
Hey, he does. That dude is a closer, and
he's a fucking closer.
Yeah.
He's fucking great. He is absolutely star worthy. Getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but if he has 5 to 6 more years of this, I think he'll make the Hall of Fame. Yeah, I mean, he's completely worthy of it. So look, going back to why I would have maybe teeny tiny bit slightly preferred to play the Sixers. One is Simmons. Two is they don't really have any other star players or any shooters, in my opinion, besides Embiid. They brick threes left and right, which plays right into the Bucks' hands. I think they can be scored upon. And the only downside in that whole scenario was the home court, which big deal. I mean, like I said, the Hawks won 3 times this series.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, like the Sixers, like they collapsed. You know what I mean? I understand what you're talking about, but the Hawks aren't better than the Sixers. Like, and I think
I'm just talking about matchup wise for the Bucks. I agree with you.
You're just, in my opinion, you're just trying right now to like justify and prep for a few things. The Bucks are going to run those dudes off the court.
So I still think it's going to take 6 games. We win the series, but it's going to take 6 games, and here's why. There will be at least one game where the Hawks just go lights out shooting, and there's just nothing we can fucking do about it. Okay, that's going to happen at least one game, right?
Maybe.
They're good for at least one of those games in a series, and then I think the opposite will happen too. I think there's at least one game where the Bucks will just totally stink it up on offense, and it really won't matter what Atlanta does. So I think that's the reason why in 6. Could I see the Bucks winning in 5? Sure. I don't see them sweeping the Hawks. I also don't see it going 7. So 5 or 6 with a slight nod to 6 for the reasons I just gave.
4 or 5, but yeah, I agree to disagree. Regardless, your boys are going to the finals here.
4, if that happens, for the first time in 50 years, or slightly. I think the last time the Bucks made the finals was when they won the NBA championship in '71. So when did they last go to the finals? Let me just check here. I think they went to the finals the year after that too. Yeah. 74, excuse me. So it'll be 47 years since they have been. So that will be absolutely freaking amazing. So never in my lifetime. I'm not that old, people. But if they win the title, it'll be 50 years since they last won the title. They won in 1971.
Wow. They're gonna win it. Like I don't see anybody really standing in their way. I think
the Suns are good. The Suns are good.
I think the Suns do beat the Clippers. But I don't think they're as good as the Bucks.
So the Bucks and Suns obviously played twice this year. Both games, the Suns beat the Bucks by 1 point, by one each game. And the game in Milwaukee went to, I believe, double overtime. And there were some horrendous officiating calls that really, in my opinion, gave the Suns that game in Milwaukee. I think two things. One, it would be a super, just for non-Bucks or non-Suns fans, a super exciting finals to watch. The second thing is, I think, when you tend to have some of those close victories in the regular season, a lot of times those karma points can switch the other way, in the playoffs. We wouldn't have home court, and the Suns' home court is a thing. And the Bucks notoriously have been absolutely freaking awful in Phoenix. I think they've won once there in like the last 30 years. It's something crazy like that. And so, I mean, all that doesn't really kind of matter with this team, right? It's a different team and all that kind of stuff. But if Chris Paul's playing, which I'm sure he will, be done with his COVID stuff by then, if we win, which I think we could, I think it would take 7 games.
Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. The Suns haven't been tested yet, and they're playing another team without their best player.
But they don't have their best player this series too, though. So that is
the question. Not even the series. Not even the series. How long is he officially out? It's just indefinitely. He could be back next game for all we know.
Well, I don't know what the whole COVID protocol stuff in the NBA is just a complete fucking bunch of nonsense in the first place. I mean,
COVID, that's true.
COVID's over, and they should be done with this stuff. I mean, they got packed arenas, for God's sakes. What are we worried about him getting COVID for?
And why are they still wearing masks on the bench?
Oh my God, is that the biggest bunch of virtue signaling you've ever seen? Let's all bang each other. Let's all bang each other around on the court for 48 or 53 minutes, drip sweat on each other, breathe, and probably, having spittle across the face to an X, but then go to the bench and put a mask on. Yeah. Okay. So please stop.
Oh man. Yeah. That's got to be the worst part of the NBA, right? Every time I see him on the bench with the mask on, I just like shake my head.
It's ridiculous. And by the way, this is a quick little side topic too. I think it looks ridiculous that they have the first few rows behind each of the benches tarped off, and not selling out the seats because of the same reason. They don't want players getting too close to fans. I mean, those are pretty much the only seats in any of the arenas that are not full. And it's again a bunch of nonsense. The players are walking to and from the locker rooms.
Yeah. Well, did you see Trae Young passing the ball in at the end of the game tonight?
No, I missed that part.
Like literally the Sixers fans, the ref had to stop the game and push him back further because they were like inches away from the dude. And I'm like, okay, every time these players go to the sidelines, they're in contact with fans.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And I think it looks visually bad on TV. It's so loud in these arenas because it's basically 99% packed. But those first, 3 to 5 rows, on the TV viewing side looks bad. If they're really that worried about it, move the team benches to the other side, the fourth side.
I know. Well, the issue with it, Mark, is they're not worried about it at all. They just want to maintain some sort of image right now.
It's so bad. I'm so tired of the virtue signal and those Heineken commercials with them wearing masks still at the bars when every freaking club and bar in this country is now open and mask requirements are gone, to still be doing that in these commercials.
I saw you were at the bars last night celebrating that dub.
Friday night.
Oh, it was Friday. Okay.
Yeah. Packed club, packed dance floor. It's over. And and no masks, of course. Can we please move on from the virtue signaling commercials? I won't drink another Heineken until they get rid of those commercials. So, and they're not going to be sponsoring this podcast anytime soon. So, Anyways, well, it's going to be a super exciting week. I can't wait. Bucks first game is going to be Wednesday at Fiserv Forum. Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals, and game 2 will be of the Western Conference Finals will be Tuesday. So they'll have actually played 2 games in the Western Conference before they've even played 1 in the East, which is kind of silly too. That should be flip flop. The Bucks should be playing Tuesday, and the Clippers, Suns should be Wednesday. But the folks at don't seem to
I'm
have their shit
glad
together on that.
you're lucky you got a horse in the game right now. Because honestly, from a current casual fan, now that my team's out, and I won't necessarily say casual. I'll say, what would you even call me at this point?
You're a very passionate jazz fan, I would say.
Yeah. But I mean, what I mean is, like, now that my team's out, I guess I'm kind of like a bystander fan, where I'm still into like what happens. My issue with these two series right now is I think the Suns walk away from the Clippers, especially if they can get Chris Paul back anytime soon. And I've already mentioned it. The Bucks run away with this. So right now, I've been into almost every single series in the playoffs so far. I've barely missed any games. I'm over here on the East Coast, so like work never interferes with anything. So I just kind of chill here till 1 a.m. and on my couch and watch the games. But these two series, I've got a very like big lack of interest in both of them due to the fact that I just don't see much competitiveness going on.
Well, I don't agree with that I don't agree. I think they will be a lot more competitive than you realize. I mean, the Clippers have shown a lot of resiliency, even when they get down 2-0, which they've done twice, and they're the only team I believe in the NBA that's come back from 2-0 deficit. So they can't be counted out no matter what. Again, Staples Center is going to be packed for all the games there now. And I don't see the Suns just waltzing in there and taking two straight from them in Staples with a packed crowd. Even if Kawhi is out, I just don't. When they beat the Lakers, first of all, the Lakers are nowhere near as good as the Clippers. And second of all, Staples Center was dead. I mean, there was nobody at the games barely. So things have changed in the last, 3 to 4 weeks. And so I think that I do think the Suns win. I would agree with you. I think it goes 6 games, maybe 7.
Okay.
And as I just said, I think the Bucks series will be more competitive than people think. And even if let's say in the best case scenario, the Bucks do win in 4 by some chance. I mean, the Hawks are, talented team and they can shoot lights out. So even if somehow the Bucks do get a little bit lucky and sweep or win in 5, I mean, I would be shocked if like the Hawks are going to get blown off the court each game. I mean, they've got enough shooting to stay in every single game.
Yeah. And I guess I did forget that Reggie Jackson is Michael Jordan reincarnated right now.
Well, I can't believe, what was it, Herder tonight for the Hawks?
Oh, Herder, man, he went off.
I didn't realize he was a first-round draft pick, but he was. I think he was the 19th overall pick. And so everyone, of course, expected Trae Young, the other first-round pick, to have, of course, the big game. And he didn't play well at all tonight, except for the end. He played pretty well. But Herder had a monster game. I mean, so and Bogdanovich, he didn't play tonight, right? Or did he? I didn't really pay attention too closely on that one. But I mean, he's a great shooter and great scorer. And they've got scores left and right. Now, I don't think the Hawks are going to be able to stop us, very much at all. But I guess maybe I could be talked into Bucks in 5. I still think, it's just these guys are professionals. They get to this point for a reason. You don't usually luck your way into an Eastern Conference Finals appearance. And unless the other team is so dominant, like say the Warriors in 2016 kind of thing, you just or 2017, 2016. I just don't think you really can just waltz right through, and just beat a team in the Eastern Conference Finals in 4 games. I just think that's
usually... you remember the Hawks a few years ago when they were the 1 seed, LeBron swept them.
Yeah, it can happen. I mean, that was when Budenholzer was coach too, right?
I believe so. Yeah. I'm actually, as we speak, but
they had no stars on that team. I mean, the Hawks had no stars on that team. The Hawks clearly have stars on this team.
1.
Yeah, 1.5, I'd say. Yeah.
Who's the half?
I think Bogdanovich he's at least again on the offensive side of things. I mean, we were trying to move heaven and earth to get him on the Bucks, in the offseason.
Yeah, so he the past 2 games he hasn't even been in the game in prime time from what I've seen. Like they've been sitting in. But I'm trying to find a bet right now. Actually, the more we talk, the more I'm convincing myself that the Bucks are sweeping. I'm trying to find a Bucks sweep bet. What are my odds here?
Well, let's not forget, and we got this on air. You do owe me $100 in Bitcoin.
I do. I know. I need to go get that 100 to you.
It's all good, man. Hey, that was a hard fought $100 there.
It really was.
That was a good bet. I mean, that was, from your perspective, I think that was a completely, winning bet to take, because I mean, I was betting for the Bucks simply because, they're my team. But you were betting on it really more from a logical perspective.
So honest answer here. Kyrie doesn't go down. Do the Bucks advance?
Most likely no. Most likely no. He was not having a good game 4 though, even before he got hurt. Now he got hurt in the middle of the second quarter of game 4, but he was not playing that well in that game up to that point.
Yeah, the thing about him though is he's another threat. Like what they did to the Nets in overtime could not have happened if Kyrie was another option on offense.
You're probably right. I mean, look, I think everyone agreed that if the Nets were at full strength, I mean, nobody's stopping that. I mean, that's
they're winning the championship.
It's a super team. It's a super team, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad they lost. But, like forget it. I'm done with super teams like that. Like, I don't know. It just makes things like the Warriors when Durant went there. It was like, honestly, I didn't even watch the NBA for 2 years because it was kind of like knowing the ending to a movie before you go see it. It's like you knew that it was going to be LeBron coming out of the East, and you knew it was going to be the Warriors coming out of the West, and you knew the Warriors were going to win.
Yeah, I think the super team thing is a pile of crap too. I think there should be some kind of rule where for free agency only, of course, if it's homegrown talent, that's different. But there's got to be some kind of rule where you can't have, I don't know, let's call it more than 2 5-time All-Stars or something like that. I mean, just come up with something. I mean, it's just lame. Because otherwise
it's dumb. Yeah.
I mean, because otherwise the problem is just the luxury tax or the salary cap just doesn't matter. I mean, they just blow through that and just say, oh, we'll pay the luxury tax, or a guy will take a pay cut just knowing like he's made enough money, he doesn't care, right? So the salary cap isn't enough of a deterrent. And since one player can make such a huge difference in basketball, you've got to do something that, if 2 guys want to hook up and play together, fine. That's one thing, but you can't have 3 or more. I mean, that's just bullshit. And
yeah,
it's just garbage for the league. It doesn't help anything.
Like Kawhi and Paul George, everybody's seen it. Like they're not overly dominant, but those 3 absolutely would have been. And then you have
right.
the Warriors who are already good enough to win championships without Durant. And then you add like literally the best player in the world to their team. It's just bad. Like even as fans of the team, like if the Jazz went this offseason and like obviously they're not free agents, but if they got like Durant and LeBron, it's like as a Jazz fan winning the title that year, honestly, I wouldn't even care that much because it's like, okay, cool. You know what I mean? There's no like pride in it.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is, if the Bucks win the title, this is a legit title. Giannis homegrown.
The Bucks, if they win the title, that is some hardcore effort right there. That is years in the making. Yeah. That is like sticking with it. Honestly, it's the same thing when the Warriors started winning. It's like that team was legitimately built out of like draft picks and growing talent and signing good free agents. Right. But it was like that was awesome when the Warriors
and making shrewd trades, at the deadline and stuff like that. Those are all things that you should be rewarded for, not Durant texts Kyrie and he texts Harden and says, let's all play together. Okay, cool. But
yeah, and Harden forces his way out of Houston by not playing and forces a trade. And like, it just becomes a shit show on every level.
Harden's a clown. Okay, let's just be real about that. Now, Durant, even though he did this, he wanted to form the super team, I still have a ton of respect for him. Guy's, like I said, a top 10 player of all time, in my opinion. And he's just that talented. So, if that's what he wants to do, he can do that. But Harden, idiot for doing that, and total clown for forcing his way out of Houston, and really to some degree Kyrie, for forcing his way out of Boston. And he was terrible in the series for the Celtics when we beat them in the semifinals 2 years ago. The Celtics beat us the first game, and then we went on and crushed them in the next 4. Kyrie was a total no-show that series. And so, I mean, guys that do that where they're a no-show to kind of force their way out, I have no respect for that.
I agree.
Yeah. So, well, man, this has been a super amazing weekend of NBA basketball. We are glad that we were able to bring it to all of our listeners on the Ball and Chain podcast. You and I are going to probably do another pod later this week on Thursday, Friday-ish, after at least one of the Eastern Conference Finals games. And we will see if your prediction is on its way to being true, or if I think it's going to be a little bit tougher than we thought.
Hey, anybody out there on Zen Sports, create me a Bucks and 4 bet.
You're not allowed to use it because you're here in the U.S. But anybody, anybody outside, just go find Jess on social media. Which she's a big fan of.
Add me on LinkedIn, whatever. Send me your bet. Like, let's make this happen. We'll have Mark be the mediator. I'm in.
All right. We can make that. We can make that happen for Jess. All right. Appreciate your time tonight, buddy. We will chat to you later this week.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Mark.